Welcome everybody. We're here today for our Wellness Wednesday cooking demo. My name's Lisa Markley. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist and I serve as the Director of Culinary Medicine for Advent Health at our Whole Health Institute. We have an outpatient integrative medicine clinic that's located at our South Overland Park campus at 165th Street, and I work alongside different integrative medicine practitioners. But my job as Director of Culinary Medicine is to help translate healthy eating to the plate through delicious recipes. So today we're going to learn how to make a few recipes in 30 minutes or less, hopefully, and while talking about some of the nutrition and health benefits of some of the ingredients that I'm going to use today. I'm also an adjunct faculty member here. I teach here in this department, our culinary food and beverage students, and really anybody who wants to take my nutrition class. So some of you look familiar, but some of you look new. Raise your hand if you've never been to one of my classes before. Okay, well, welcome. I also like to check at the beginning if there are any food allergies or sensitivities that I need to be aware of. Does anybody have any concerns that I need to be aware of? Okay. All right, so we're going to be making 3 recipes. Actually, one of them I'm going to do more show and tell, but I'm going to start off with some brownies today. And since we're kind of finally in fall with sweater weather season, I decided to opt for a recipe that incorporated sweet potatoes in them. And I know you're like, that sounds kind of strange, but honestly, the last group said I didn't even know they were in there. I forgot you put sweet potatoes in there. So the reason I like this particular recipe, because aside from it incorporating sweet potatoes and it being a seasonal fall vegetable, is that because of the sweetness of the sweet potatoes, you get to use less sugar. So most brownie recipes call for about 1 cup of added sugar, and this particular recipe calls for about 1/2 cup. In fact, I think I actually just made it with 1/3 of a cup because I think you can even nudge it down some as well. So the way you prepare your sweet potato before you put it in the bowl is you poke some holes in it, and you don't have to peel it yet. Poke some holes in it, throw it in the microwave for about 7 or 8 minutes until it's soft. And then when you get it out of the microwave, you can peel the meat of the sweet potato away from the skin. Normally, if I'm roasting sweet potatoes, I keep the skin on, or if I'm putting them in soup, I do like to keep the skin on because of the added fiber, the B vitamins, all the extra minerals that are in the skin. I don't like to throw that out, but for this particular recipe, because of the texture, we do take the skin off. So we cook that sweet potato, we put it in the bowl. This is a flourless recipe, so we're using some almond butter as our base, and this is going to have some healthy fats, protein, and fiber. Most of your dessert recipes, you don't really consider them a source of good source of fiber, but these actually have a pretty decent amount of fiber in them because we're using some plant-based whole foods to get that. And so almond butter also has magnesium, which is good for your nervous system and your muscles. And it's also kind of naturally sweet as well. So it's a good ingredient. I do like this little jar. You can find at Aldi. You can also grind your own almond butter at some grocery stores, so just be on the lookout for that. The next ingredient that's going into our wet mixture is oil. So this recipe actually came from a food blogger that I follow. Downshiftology is the blog, and I did put that at the top of your recipe. Her recipe called for coconut oil, and I had some on hand, but I feel like you could probably use other vegetable oils in this, avocado, olive, whatever vegetable oil you have on hand. I don't think there's a real purpose necessarily to using coconut oil. Some dessert recipes that are vegan or raw food type recipes, if they do call for coconut oil and they're chilled, it's because they want the firmness to come from that coconut oil. But I think with this particular recipe, you could swap out whatever oil you have on hand. So then the last liquid ingredient I'm going to put in there is about 1 teaspoon or so of vanilla extract. So then I just take my hand mixer, and I'm going to puree that a little bit, get it nice and mixed up before I add my dry ingredients. My dry ingredients that are going to go in today, I've got some unsweetened cocoa powder. So your cocoa powder, basically, you could do, like a Hershey's cocoa powder, Ghirardelli. This is just what I happen to have on hand. It's just an unsweetened cocoa powder. And I like to use unsweetened cocoa powder for other things in my kitchen. Like I might throw it in smoothies. I'll make a chocolate peanut butter banana smoothie with a tablespoon or two of unsweetened cocoa powder. So there's other ways to utilize this aside from the brownies that we're making today. But you see I've got the sweet potatoes pretty mixed in there with the almond butter and the vanilla and the oil. And so I'll set that down for a minute. Let's get our cocoa powder added. We like cocoa because I like to consider its own food group. It does add a lot of magnesium, also good for your nervous system. And there are also some flavonoids found in cocoa powder that nourish the health of your microbiome, which is your gut health, basically, all that good bacteria. So we need about a half a cup. Sorry, I was a little short on this one, so I want to make sure. Okay, half a cup of the cocoa powder and a quarter of a cup of tapioca flour. And the tapioca flour is added just to give it a little bit of a chewy texture. If you don't normally keep tapioca flour on hand, I'm sure you'd be fine with just doing a quarter cup of all-purpose flour. I think she wrote this recipe to be gluten-free, and so that was kind of the modification there. So, but I think you could use all-purpose flour if you don't have that in your cupboard already. All right, sorry, I forgot to put in the baking soda and the salt. Let's get the rest of the ingredients in here, and the sugar. The next ingredient is a half a cup of sugar, granulated sugar. Her recipe calls for coconut sugar, but I just am using regular granulated sugar. Natural sweeteners like coconut sugar, honey, and maple syrup have the benefit of having like a more robust flavor, so I think a little bit goes a long way. For the purpose of this recipe, I just use the regular sugar because that's what I had on hand. And really there's no like difference from a nutritional standpoint. A teaspoon of coconut sugar has 4 grams of added sugar, and a teaspoon of granulated sugar is the same. So you're metabolizing it the same way. It's just kind of, do you want a little bit more of that caramelly sweetness that comes from the coconut sugar, or regular sugar is interchangeable here. So I like to be flexible with my recipes. And then the last ingredient that's going to go in is about a teaspoon of baking soda here, and then some salt as well, about a quarter teaspoon of salt. In the recipe it says it's optional to add some espresso powder if you happen to have that on hand. I did not, so it was only like a half a teaspoon, so I thought I'm just going to skip that. And the purpose, if you did have some espresso powder at home, is that would just deepen the richness and the chocolatey flavor. Speaking of which, I should probably pull the brownies out of the oven that I've already got going. I'll come back to you in a minute here. Okay. All right, I'm multitasking. All right, so here we go. So I'm just going to mix the batter the rest of the way. And it's not like your standard batters that might be a little bit more fluid or liquidy. It's going to be more like Play-Doh. These are kind of a denser, fudgier brownie. And so we're not really looking for them to pour off your spoon necessarily like some, like cupcake batter might be, or some sort of batters might be. And the other last little ingredient I'm going to throw in here are some chocolate chips. I do like to use the mini chocolate chips, because that just disperses that chocolate flavor a little bit more throughout instead of having big hunks of chocolate with the larger chips. Sometimes you have to stop for a second and just kind of scrape your bowl and just get everything reincorporated in there. But yeah, we're getting there. And then what you do after you get it mixed is, I just want to show you the dough. Like I said, it's not super sticky. It doesn't even stick to my hands, but it's kind of like a Play-Doh texture. So I just prepare a baking sheet, or a baking dish rather. Let me pull this one over here so you can see it on the camera. So I just prepare like an 8x8 baking pan, and you could do that either by just simply spraying some spray oil and then just pressing the dough into the pan, putting in the oven at 350 for about, is it 22, 23 minutes? I forgot. Yeah, 23 to 25 minutes. You just check it with a toothpick to see when it's done. You could put some chopped walnuts on top. You could sprinkle a few more dark chocolate chips on top if you want. But the other thing you could do to prepare your pan is you can line it with parchment with a little bit of spray oil on the parchment. Then you just, when it's done, you just pull that whole sheet of parchment out, put it on your cutting board and cut it that way. So pretty easy, and you'll get to try that here in a little bit. Any questions about the brownie recipe? Has anybody made anything like this before? No, you haven't snuck black beans into brownies? I know that one's a little bit. Yeah, I much rather go with the sweet potatoes. So I think the last group really liked them. So we'll give them a try in just a few minutes here. The next recipe I wanted to tell you about, and let me just count how many people we are real quick. Okay, just trying to make sure I have the right amount of volume here. Okay, because I'm doing the next recipe will be more show and tell, because I want to make sure I have time to serve you all, is the oven baked Italian turkey zucchini meatballs. Let's see here. Actually, you know what? I think I do have time to show you that one. What I'm going to do is, let's go to the Italian wedding soup, since I kind of started on that one. And so what I started on is really any time you make a soup, whether it's chicken soup or even different sauces, the base is called mirepoix. Mirepoix is basically 2 parts onion to 1 part celery to 1 part carrot. So if you have 1 cup of onion, it would be a half a cup of celery and a half a cup of carrot. And that's that aromatic base that really develops some nice deep flavor for your soups. And so that's what we started with. And I already kind of got a head start because I didn't want you to wait 4 or 5 minutes while that was softening. So I've already put the onion, the celery, and the carrot in there. I am going to go ahead and add some garlic. I do like to wait. I don't like to add the garlic too soon because it cooks up a little faster and I don't like it to burn. So when I take garlic, I usually will take that head and I'll kind of break it up with my hand to get those individual cloves to come apart. And then I take the side of my knife to smash it down, and that helps peel that paper off pretty easily. Thank you. So I usually, you notice that the handle of my knife, I don't want it to really interfere with the board, so I usually go to the end of my board and get that handle out of the way to smash my garlic. And then peel the garlic and then get it kind of chopped up. So we're going to put that in our aromatic base of the carrots, celery, and onion. There are other types of mirepoix. You could do I think a white mirepoix would have a parsnip instead of a carrot, and that might have a little bit of a sweeter taste to it because of the parsnips being a little sweeter. So I already kind of sautéed the onion and the carrot and a little bit of the celery, well, the ratio that I mentioned. And now I'm just reheating it back up to add that garlic. Now, when you're getting your soup ready, what I usually say is, you want to do your mise en place before you even turn your pot on, okay? Because if you turn your pot on, you heat your oil, and you're still chopping your onion, your oil's going to burn. So I usually try to get like my carrots, everything chopped in little bowls so they can boom, 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 add it to the dish, add it to the pot. So go ahead and add our garlic in there. And like I said, I kind of got a head start because I didn't want you to have to wait on that. But the other thing that I was going to mention is, as you're adding things to the pot, that oil kind of starts seeping into the vegetables and things might start sticking to the bottom of your pan. So what I usually do to get things unstuck is I don't add more oil. I either add a couple tablespoons of water or broth, and that just helps to deglaze the pan. And it adds a little steam, so it kind of helps to cook those vegetables. But yeah, instead of adding more oil, I would just suggest deglazing the pan with a little bit of broth or water. Okay, so the other important thing to add kind of early on as you're developing your broth are the dried spices. So I've got today some fennel seed and oregano and thyme. Somebody in the last class asked me if we could just put some Italian seasoning in. So yeah, absolutely. You could just do like a teaspoon of Italian seasoning, but I would still add the fennel seed and the sage because those typically are not in your Italian seasoning blend. But I just add that. And when you're cooking with dried herbs and spices, you do want to add that early on in the cooking process because you're allowing those flavors to bloom and to develop. Now, if you're using fresh herbs like parsley or basil, that's something you would add closer to the end or maybe as a garnish because you want those fresh flavors. You don't want those to be like the flavor to be cooked out. So we've got our aromatic base in here, and now, pretty much just fast forward, say that this is all pretty much cooked. We're going to add our broth, and basically a quart of broth and about 2 cups of water. We're going to add to our soup pot, and then we're just going to let it cook. What I like to do also at this point in time, and I'm going to come back and tell you how I made the meatballs, is you could poach the raw meatballs in your broth, but I personally prefer to just bake them in the oven, know that they're cooked all the way through and that they're not going to fall apart in my pot, and then I just add them and let them really add and infuse that flavor. Does that make sense? So these meatballs have already been cooked, and I'm going to kind of walk back through and tell you how I did that. And so the last 2 things that I do with this soup is I add in and typically Italian wedding soup doesn't necessarily call for beans, but I'm always looking for ways to add more protein and fiber to meals. And beans are a really easy way to do that, especially with soups. So I just drained and rinsed these beans, and I added some white beans to the pot to kind of add some of that flavor that we're looking for and that protein and fiber. And then the last thing I do when I'm serving the soup at home, I know I wrote in the recipe to add the greens kind of at the end. Any chopped green, whether it's spinach, arugula. This is chopped kale that I just bought already chopped in a large bag. So, pretty easy to come by stuff like this as a shortcut. But what I like to do at home is I wait until I'm serving it, and then I'll just pour a little bit of, I'll put my greens in the bowl, and then I'll pour the soup broth over it. And that'll be usually enough to wilt the greens. Of course you could add the greens to the pot, but then they're going to kind of cook down and they might get a little bit, they're not going to keep that green vibrant color that I like. So any questions about that? Okay, so I'm probably just going to marry these 2 together. I just wanted to have one ready and then have one that I demoed. All right, oh yeah, I think I forgot to put salt in that one. I don't think I put salt in there. Yeah, but the aromatic herbs are really nice. Okay. And I know a few of you trickled in after I'd asked this at the beginning, but is anybody that I need to be aware of gluten or dairy free? I have a few meatballs that don't have gluten in them, but they all have parmesan. So, okay, we're all good. Okay, so I'm just going to marry these 2 pots together and then we'll get you served. Y'all are a quiet group this afternoon. Make them. Yes. The question is, did I rinse the beans? Yes. I think it's important to drain and rinse the beans. Sometimes the liquid that the beans are in, they absorb some of the indigestible carbohydrates that are in beans that cause more gas and bloating. So if I was just to pour the beans in here with the liquid, that might be a little bit more indigestion that I'm willing to deal with. So it's a good idea to drain and rinse the beans for sure. Okay, let me see here. How many do we have today? 2, 4, 22? Okay, so we're gonna serve this soup, and it's gonna be kind of hot. Oh wait, I need to put my, like I said, I don't think we're gonna have leftovers today, but so I'm just gonna put my greens right in. But normally I would put greens in each bowl and go from there. And I'll talk you through, in just a minute, I'll talk you through the, once I get these served, I'll talk you through the meatballs, but they're pretty easy. Yes, it's gonna be delicious. You're ready? All right. Turn that off. Pardon me? Bone broth, yes, that's a good question. Okay, so there's lots of different broth options at the store. I usually try to do like a low sodium chicken or vegetable broth. You know, bone broth tends to be a higher price tag, but the benefit is that it's more concentrated in protein. So a serving of bone broth is about 9 grams per cup, where this is just like 1 gram. Now this soup has protein in it from the beans and the turkey, so utilizing bone broth may not be necessary because you're getting some good protein from those other sources. Now if I was cooking for somebody healing from surgery, somebody who needs more protein, like if they have cancer, or you know, something along those lines, maybe a pregnant woman who needs more protein, periods of rapid growth and development, we need more protein. So that's when I might utilize the bone broth option. Does that help answer that question? Okay, so we're gonna bring these around along with the spoons. Thank you, Megan. And this is gonna be pretty hot, so. Yeah, keep firing questions at me if you like. I can walk and talk, deliver soup and answer questions as we go. Okay.
How do you spell the mirepoix?
Mirepoix, mirepoix. It's a French term. It's mirepoix, mirepoix. And it's just the ratio of carrots, celery, and onion as your aromatic base. And like I said, you could swap out parsnip for the carrot if you want a sweeter base, or you just want to change it up a little. But yeah, that's you know, all of your sauces, like a lot of your sauce bases are based on mirepoix. I think I'm okay, but I appreciate that. Thank you. We'll come back with more soup. Yep. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Uh-huh. A healthy Alfredo recipe. That's not one I've really worked with a lot. I mean, I know there's got to be options. Can I get back to you on that?
Yes,
Can I look at some of my sources? Because I think, you know, what I usually like to do with recipes is try to find, sometimes I'll look online, other people, you know, like this brownie recipe, for example. I'm not a big baker, so I know that she does a lot of testing of her recipes, and you look at it and she's had hundreds of, you know, 4 whatever star reviews. So like, okay, I can count on that one hopefully working out. But yeah, I would probably explore some of my sources for that. Here you go. Yes, one website that comes to mind that might be worth checking out is Gimme Some Oven. Gimme Some Oven, Gimme Some Oven. And she's actually lives here in Kansas City, but she's got a world famous food blog. And I think she does a lot of kind of slightly healthier twists on classics. Thank you. All right, where are we going?
Very good.
Do you like it? Okay, good. All right. Saving the best for last. I'll be right up with yours.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me reach around you. You got it? Mm-hmm. Here's a napkin.
Thanks. Gonna need that.
I'll be right back. Okay, so we have one, and then Richie and you. Eddie, do you want some soup? We've got an Italian wedding soup. Yeah, Megan will. Let me grab one for. Oh, here, you take that one, sir. Enjoy. Richie, we'll be right back with yours. There you are. Enjoy. He was following his nose. Okay. Now that you're trying the soup, any questions? I know I didn't really talk you through the meatballs, but they're super easy. We'll bring around the brown. Did everybody get one? Soup? Okay. We'll bring around the brownies here in just a moment. Let me just, I guess, quickly talk you through the turkey meatballs. You could use ground beef if that's what you had on hand. What I would suggest either way is to utilize lean ground beef. So anything 90% or lean, 90% or above is going to be leaner. Same with the ground turkey, which is what I use today. So you mix the pound of ground turkey with about a cup of grated zucchini, shredded zucchini, which you could just do on a cheese grater. That's all I did here, very easily. 1 egg, so you just break the egg in there. And then is it a quarter of a cup? Yeah, a quarter of a cup of breadcrumbs and a quarter of a cup of Parmesan cheese. And then some seasonings. So I did Italian seasoning, garlic powder, onion powder, red chili flake. That made it really easy. Of course, if you'd rather chop up onion and garlic, you could put that in your meatball instead of the dried spice. If you wanted to leave out I've done without the breadcrumbs and I've used quinoa instead, which it doesn't really help it stick together, but it does add a little bit of volume to the meatball. And it adds a little extra nutrition, having the cooked quinoa in there. You have to cook the quinoa first. Don't put the dried quinoa in there. And then I had somebody ask me, can you leave out the Parmesan? You know, the Parmesan does help to bind it a little bit. You could leave it out, or if you're, if you're dairy free, if you're familiar with nutritional yeast, you could use that as kind of the cheesy substance that would go in here. And there are some vegan, non-dairy Parmesan cheese options on the market as well. So it's kind of versatile. You could do shredded carrot if you wanted to do instead of the shredded zucchini. So use what you have on hand. But that's kind of how I made the meatballs. I put them in balled them up, and then put them on the sheet pan. For the purpose of the soup, you might want to make the meatballs a little smaller than if you were to serve them over pasta. But I like making these because you can make a double or even a triple batch and then cook them in the oven, let them cool completely, and then just freeze them. So that's one of the things that I like to do it for like batch cooking. So what do you guys think of everything you're trying so far? You like it? Awesome. Any questions? Any more questions? You want some soup, Crystal? Okay. Yeah, please let me know if you have any more questions or comments. 3 more brownies. All right. We got it. No. I mean, technically you're supposed to, and I think I forgot to. For this batch I forgot to, but you could, because zucchini does have a high water content, you can just grate it and then squeeze it, between. You don't have to do that salt. No, you don't have to salt the zucchini to pull any moisture out. Yeah, be careful, it's hot. Yeah, no, that's a good question. In fact, I did put that in the step number 2, place shredded zucchini between paper towels and press down to squeeze out extra moisture. But to be completely honest, I totally forgot to do that. And they turned out fine. So they might ooze a little bit more on your sheet pan, but you know, I think that they turn out just fine. So any other questions? Good sweater weather recipes, right? Comforting but nourishing. That's our goal. You like the brownie? Yeah. I can't claim ownership on that recipe, but I like to share places that I find good recipes from because I think it's, you know, trying to navigate recipes on the internet can be difficult sometimes to know whether or not what you're coming across is actually going to work. Is it going to taste good? So I really found Downshiftology, Give Me Some Oven. Those are some good sources. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Yes. Is there a difference between cocoa powder and cacao powder? So I know it was written in the recipe cacao. I think the difference mainly, I mean, they're pretty interchangeable. I think cacao powder is referring more to like cocoa powder in its raw form, so it hasn't been, I think if I have this right in my head, it hasn't been heated, but they pretty much taste the same. I think cacao powder started being utilized a lot in like raw vegan type recipes, and so that's where you might see it more, but you know, cocoa powder is still going to have a lot of the same polyphenols and beneficial antioxidant compounds in it. And it's just one ingredient, it's just cocoa. So I think, you know, I don't know, that it's just not really worth paying a little more for like a raw cacao powder necessarily. Yeah. Any other questions? Give Me Some Oven and the Downshiftology, which is where I found the, which is on the sweet potato brownie recipe handout. So, yeah. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I would, once your brownies cool completely, I usually keep them in the fridge. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming today. I'll stick around and answer any additional questions you might have. But yeah, take your time, eat up any last bites, and we'll see you next time. I don't have an upcoming date on the calendar yet, but hopefully sometime in the early part of the year. Yeah. My pleasure. Thanks for coming.